Thanks for staying with NDTV. You're watching The World Report with me, Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Our top focus this Tuesday now, as Israel and Iran trade strikes on a fifth consecutive day, civilians in flashpoint areas continue facing waves of attacks. In fact, in Iran, at least 224 people have been killed since hostilities began. On the other hand, in Israel, 24 people have been killed right now. Now, in the latest, Ali Shadmani, Iran's highest-ranking military officer and chief war commander, was killed in Israeli airstrikes. This news just broke moments ago. Meanwhile, explosions were heard in Tehran, with Iranian news sites reporting 3 sites in the northeast of the capital were hit by projectiles, while air defenses were activated in the city of Natanz, the location of the key nuclear installations. Here's Netanyahu, in fact, defending Israel's latest strikes on Tehran.
I mean, to have these mad mullahs who are committed to destroying us in order to destroy you, to say that they should have nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to deliver them to you, and to say that that's not your interest, well, we're fighting this war. We're taking the action.
Israelis were told they may leave bomb shelters after air raid sirens sounded across the country and explosions were heard over Tel Aviv, although there have been no confirmed reports of casualties this morning. Over in Canada, Donald Trump left the G7 meeting in early because of what's going on in the Middle East, he says. But he did sign a joint statement with the group to express support for Israel and label Iran as a source of instability in the wider region. In a social media post, Trump also wrote in capital letters, in which you see on your screens right now, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. He added that everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran.
Mr. President, do you see regime change in Iran?
I want to see no nuclear weapon in Iran, and we're well on our way to making sure that happens.
Meanwhile, a joint statement released on Monday by the foreign ministers of 21 Arab and Islamic countries condemned the ongoing Israeli military election against Iran, which has in fact been escalating tensions in the wider West Asia region as well. Now we stick with West Asia, where India has begun evacuating its nationals from Iran amid the escalating tensions between Tehran and Israel. The first batch of 110 Indian nationals who have safely crossed into Armenia will in fact be flying to New Delhi as early as Wednesday. My colleague Vishal Vivek joins me for the latest on this. Vishal, could you... And well, for our viewers just joining in, India has begun evacuating its nationals from Iran amid the escalating tensions between Tehran and Israel. My colleague Vishal Vivek joins us for the latest on this. Vishal, 110 Indian national students, in fact, have already been evacuated to Armenia. Could you tell the route that the evacuees, in fact, are taking out of Iran?
Well, the route has just been mentioned once, and this is the same route that's been taken by the 110 Indian students who were evacuated. They will be going to Armenia, and they will be traveling to New Delhi through Armenia on a flight tomorrow. And further details have not been shared as to how the rest of the students, numbering in the at least 1,900 Indian students, remain there, and they will have to be also pulled out. Other than that, there will at least be at 8,000 additional Indians who live there, and also some 800 persons of Indian origin. So in total, there are about 11,000 Indians that will need to be pulled out. They will need to be extracted from this hostile situation. On the other side, Israel also has about 20,000 Indians living there, who range from caregivers to IT professionals to students. About 5,000 students of India are there. So on both sides there are tensions, but the mostly damage has been done on the Iranian side. So that is why Indian government is trying to pull out Indian students from Iran and trying to avoid the dangerous situations that the students have been put into.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vishal. Moving on, PM Narendra Modi landed at the Calgary International Airport in Canada on Tuesday to attend the G7 summit that is taking place at the nearby Kananaskis village in Alberta. This is PM Modi's first visit to Canada since 2015, following an official invitation from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, during the 23-hour tour, the PM will hold bilateral meetings with global leaders and also attend the outreach sessions at the G7 summit, coming over a month after India's Operation Sindoor that targeted terror infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in retaliation for the April 22 Pahalgam attacks. Though India is not a member of the G7, Prime Minister Modi has been invited to the grouping's meeting consistently since 2019. This is his sixth consecutive visit to the G7 forum. The invitation reflects India's growing importance in Canada and around the world. The visit has global attention as it marks PM Modi's first visit to Canada since the diplomatic ties between the two countries, in fact, declined following the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in 2023. Meanwhile, my colleague Maha Siddiqui caught up with a few students ahead of PM Modi's visit, and here's what they had to say.
Indian students are a global lot these days. But what that means is a friction between the governments of two countries can have an immediate fallout on this younger lot. I have with me a group of students from India here in Canada. Let's speak to them about their expectations now that the relations between India and Canada seem to be improving. Many thanks all of you for speaking with NDTV. I'll start off with you. What expectation do you now have for the students, considering that there were some unique problems that students from India were facing in Canada? Do you think the fact that Prime Minister Modi is coming to Canada is a good sign even for the students?
I think it's an amazing sign, and as someone who calls herself a youth leader here in Calgary and Cheshire, I'm very, very happy to say that we, the students here as well as the Indian diaspora, we are eagerly ready to welcome Prime Minister Modi ji into Canada, and we really hope that this visit leads to a better alignment of Canada and India's values as well as their goals for both nations, and they work towards developing and building a mutually beneficial and effective relationship and alliance which can help and benefit both populations of India and Canada, and definitely can help some of our students as well, and we don't feel so split amongst our loyalties as well as amongst which country to support, to favor.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump abruptly left the G7 summit on Monday, departing a day early as the conflict between Israel and Iran intensifies, and the US leader declared that Tehran should in fact immediately be evacuated. Now, world leaders had gathered in Canada with one specific goal, and that was to tackle, in fact, the flare-up of violence in West Asia, to diffuse a series of global pressure points. Additionally, it was only to be disrupted by a showdown over Iran's nuclear program that could escalate in dangerous and uncontrollable ways. We are picking up. Now, Israel has launched an aerial bombardment campaign against Iran 4 days ago. Sticking with the G7 meeting in Canada, for the 51st G7 summit, in a joint statement has urged for de-escalation on Iran as tensions in West Asia continue to in fact simmer. Now, the countries in their joint statement have said that Israel has the right to defend itself, adding that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. In the statement says, we urge that the resolution of the Iran crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza. Here's a report.
We are seeing the statement coming in at a time when President Trump has already left the United States, considering the serious situation between Israel and Iran. The G7 leaders have come out with this statement. And as we were expecting earlier, that if the situation continues to escalate, then this will overshadow the G7 summit. This is exactly what seems to be happening now, with President Trump leaving the G7 summit midway and heading back to the United States. The stated reason being that this tension has gone up. But President of France, Emmanuel Macron, has said that this could also signal that President Trump may push for peace, for a ceasefire now. We will have to wait and watch the unfolding situation, considering that President Trump also on the social media in the social media portal where he's on, which is Truth Social, had said that Iran should have struck a nuclear deal with the United States in the 60 days that were given to it. And since that was not culminated successfully, therefore, we are seeing the situation unfold. And he ended it by saying Tehran, the people in Tehran should evacuate now. So the situation continues to remain grim, but the G7, as you have already read out some of the details there of the statement, the G7 this time is anyway only coming out with separate statement on various issues. This, of course, is an issue that is unfolding even as we speak, and therefore the G7 coming out with a specific statement on that. However, the G7 this time is not going to have a big, long, single communique, and they will only have these smaller statements on which they are able to arrive at a consensus on.
The Israeli military struck a building in Deir el-Bala in central Gaza on Monday, sparking a fire. Now, no casualties were reported. This as residents evacuated after receiving a warning ahead of the attack this time, fortunately. Now, after the strike, residents rushed to search for casualties, as you see on your screens, and to in fact remove gas canisters from the area. Meanwhile, children were seen crying as firefighters arrived to extinguish the blaze. The strike comes amid ongoing Israeli military operations across the Gaza Strip. Also late on Monday, at least 34 Palestinians were killed in new shootings on the roads leading to Israel and US-supported food distribution centers in the Strip, the local health ministry has claimed. Viewers, now we take you straight to London, where there was a prayer meeting for the victims of the Air India Flight 171 crash. The prayer meet was in fact held by multi-faith prayers were offered in London at the Indian Embassy. Take a look.
Some Zoroastrian prayers, some Parsi prayers.
That's right.
Tell us the significance of that prayer briefly.
Well, it is basically, it's called the Hashem Vahu prayer. And as I mentioned, it's the very first prayer we are taught as a child, like within 2 years by a mother. And it's the very last prayer we learn when we pass away. And it's primarily a prayer to the importance of doing righteousness and good deeds. And it is only those good deeds which give happiness to all of us. So this is then to all the departed souls, because that is what we are remembered for, and that's what our everlasting memory. So when we pass away, we remember the departed, and sadly, in this instance, it's more traumatic than before. So that's what the prayer was about.
Phil, you represent the Jewish community in the UK. Your presence here and the significance of what you mentioned during that prayer.
Well, this is a horrendous tragedy that knows no religion, knows no nationality. As it happens, I'm of Indian origin. My grandparents are from Mumbai, but regardless of that, the tragedy that I think all of us around the world have felt. So I really want to take this opportunity to show solidarity with the families who are affected and with India, because this is a tragedy I think we all feel very deeply.
Now we shift focus eastwards to the other theatre of war. At least 14 people were killed and 44 others were injured in a combined Russian missile and drone attack on Kiev overnight Tuesday. Now, the head of Kiev's city military administration has said the attack, which hollowed out a residential building and destroyed dozens of apartments, is not the first of its kind. Meanwhile, the Interior Minister of Ukraine visited the scene and said that a US citizen was also in fact killed in the attack after suffering wounds from shrapnel. Now, 30 apartments, Ukraine claims, were destroyed in a single residential block. Kiev's mayor, meanwhile, has said fires broke out in 2 other Kiev districts as a result of falling debris from drone shots down by Ukrainian air defenses. The nighttime attack was the latest in a spate of mass drone and missile attacks to target the Ukraine capital. Here's more.
Це жах, це страшно, це мить і все, і життя немає. Тобто русню тільки можна проклинати і все. Це все, що тільки можна сказати. Вони не повинні існувати в цьому світі. За що гинуть мирні люди? Тут немає ніякої ні військової інфраструктури, нічого. Це жах, коли ночі просто гинуть багато людей.
Over in the US, a live stream caught the moment gunshots were fired during the No Kings demonstration in Salt Lake City. A man who was believed to be a part of the peacekeeping team for the demonstrating shot demonstration, in fact, shot at a person who was brandishing a rifle at demonstrators, striking both the rifleman and a bystander who later died at the hospital, according to authorities. Now, the No Kings protest swept across the country on Saturday, and organizers said millions rallied against what they described as President Donald Trump's authoritarian tendencies. Meanwhile, Taiwan's military is strengthening its maritime defense capabilities by showcasing a new fleet of uncrewed surface vehicles designed for both surveillance and offensive operations during rising tensions with China. Now, one of the key demonstrations featured the Thunder Tiger. It's a domestically developed uncrewed vessel capable of carrying up to 1,200 kilograms of explosives and traveling distances as far as 500 kilometers. Now, it's designed for attack and reconnaissance missions. The Thunder Tiger is engineered for flexibility and resilience on the battlefield. This is what the Taiwanese military is claiming. And the UK has named Blaise Metrovelli, a career intelligence official, as the first female head of the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6. This report gets you all you need to know.
Forget everything you think you know about MI6 from James Bond films, because this time it's not 007 making headlines, it's Q. She's 47, a career spy, and until now, the real-life Q in charge of tech and innovation at MI6.
In a move that's as historic as it is symbolic, Britain has just named its first ever female chief of MI6. Yes, the same agency that inspired Ian Fleming's spy thrillers. Her name, Blaise Metrovelli. Her mission, keeping Britain and arguably the rest of us one step ahead in a world spiraling into cyber wars, shadow ops, and secret alliances.
Now, she'll lead the entire Secret Intelligence Service at a time when Israel and Iran are at war, Russia is allegedly blowing things up across Europe, and the US and UK special relationship is wobbling under the return of Donald Trump.
And while old school spies whispered about gentlemen's clubs and bromances, her predecessor was called out for one with the CIA chief. But her rise signals a stark shift. This isn't about martinis and tuxedos. This is about cyber attacks on hospitals, AI surveillance in the Middle East, and whether Britain's spycraft can survive a fraying global order. Her biggest challenge? Possibly keeping Five Eyes, the elite spy-sharing alliance between the UK, US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand from turning into four. So why should we care in India? Because what MI6 does in the shadows echoes across the globe, whether it's cyber warfare tech or intelligence that shapes geopolitical responses. South Asia is not outside that web.
And for the first time in MI6's 115-year history, that web is now being spun by a woman. A woman who doesn't just understand the new rules of espionage, she helped write them. So is the world safer now that Q runs the show? We'll be watching, and so will she. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.
Welcome back. You're watching the Tuesday edition of the World Report on NDTV. On to news from the world of business now, where President Donald Trump and UK PM Keir Starmer said Monday that they are signing a trade deal that will slash tariffs on goods from both the countries. Now, as the two leaders showed reporters the signed document, papers fell to the ground. Now, the deal does not include tariffs on steel, an especially important piece of bilateral trade. Instead, talks are still going on about whether steel tariffs will be cut to zero as planned in the provisional agreement. Now, Trump and Starmer announced in May that they'd struck an agreement that would slash import taxes on British cars, steel and aluminium in return for greater access to the British markets for Americans. American products, including beef and even ethanol. But, however, it did not immediately take effect, leaving British businesses uncertain about whether the UK could very well be exposed to any surprise hikes from the Trump admin. Oil prices climbed on Tuesday on concerns of Iran-Israel conflict may intensify, raising the risk for further unrest and the potential disruption of oil supply from key Middle East regions. Now, Brent crude futures rose 34 cents or 0.5% to $73.57 a barrel. On the other hand, US West Texas Intermediate crude was up 29 cents or 0.4% at $72.06 a barrel. Now, both contracts rose more than 2% earlier in the trading session. According to reports, OpenAI executives have considered accusing Microsoft, the company's major backer, of anti-competitive behavior in their partnership. Now, OpenAI's effort could involve seeking a federal regulatory review of the terms of its contract with Microsoft for potential violations of antitrust law, as well as a public campaign. Over in US, the judge has dismissed a juror in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs after concluding that his conflicting answers, in fact, about where Combs lived might indicate he had an agenda or very well wanted to stay on the jury for a purpose. Judge Arjun made the ruling on Monday, rejecting arguments by Combs' attorneys that it would disrupt the diversity of the jury to replace the black man with a white juror. Justice Subramanian further said he had, in fact, first announced late Friday that he was dismissing the juror, but multiple defense lawyers protested. The judge delayed dismissing the juror until Monday, when the trial entered its 6th week.